So first off, we got Michael Scott, right here. He runs Scott Land and Livestock, a mixed grain and cow-calf farm in the Warrensville area, 10 miles north of Grimshaw, Alberta. Sitting next to him, we have Daniel Wall, who never thought he would be a farmer until he picked up a book called You Can Farm, which led him down the path of regenerative farming and founding Pilgrim Husbandry in Lacrete, Alberta. He's currently a board member with Organics Alberta and is just generally passionate about healthy and productive farming practices and also looking at improving multi-generational sustainability on his own farm, but also in his farming community. To the side, we have Fred Lehman. He farms with his wife, Madeline, in Cecil Lake, BC. The land that Fred farms has been cleared in the 70s and 80s, which brings some interesting challenges with it, maybe also opportunities. And the Lehmans are a 2-generational farm, and they started out with 100 dairy cows before switching to annual crops and grass seed production about 10 years ago. I just really want to express my gratitude to you three for coming up here and sharing your experience about your soils and your experience with soil compaction. It's not always easy to come and, open the door to your operation and share some thoughts. So I really want to thank you for that. So Scott, I'll hand it off to you first to share a little bit about your experience with soils and soil compaction.
Yeah, I guess the title was How I Fix Compaction or Not. I'm definitely covering the or not. We were asked to produce some kind of food for thought for today's speakers. And I figured, well, that's questions without answers. Well, I could probably cover that. So 2 questions about compaction that I constantly have, or for in front there, are why and how. Why do I have compaction? How do I fix it? I have the usual signs of compaction there, water pooling and hard to cultivate, restricted roots, such like there. So I've definitely got some compaction or tight soils that I got to deal with. So I'm now constantly asking myself, why? Why is it compacted there? And that's where it gets a little messy. My land is giving me mixed messages. Talking with a neighbor a few years ago there, and he was a straight arable guy, and he was like, well, that's easy. You got livestock. They're running around all over your farm, compacting it. That's your problem. But yet, I have some land that the cattle haven't been on. So, is it the cattle? Maybe on some of the land that they are on, they do add to the compaction. But I say obviously on some of the land there, I have no livestock or have never had livestock. So what's causing the problem there? So then I got thinking, maybe it's the management. Some of my land was years ago basically in a summer fallow cropping system, 2-year rotation. And when it was cropped, a lot of that straw was removed for the livestock. And so is that the issue? I mean, that definitely would add to some of the problems. But again, not all of my land was managed that way in the past. So again, what's causing the problems on the fields that weren't managed in that sense. And that brought me thinking to maybe natural soil minerals. Calcium magnesium ratios. And I'm just starting to get some soil sampling done on that. And the first results that I'm getting are showing that yes, I'm higher in magnesium, which does tend to tighten the soil, and low on calcium, which we know flocculates and loosens the soil. So maybe it is that, and I would like to experiment a little bit with liming and see if that is part of the problem there. And then I kind of move on to maybe it's none of those reasons. maybe it's a lack of water. Maybe we're just too dry. Last year, I was fortunate enough late summer there to have a rain event of 4 inches, and I had some land where prior to the rain I couldn't get my penetrometer in 2 inches. It just would not go. It was so hard. After the rain, the penetrometer is going right down to the handle all of a sudden. So, I mean, do we have true compaction, or is it just a lack of moisture? Maybe we just need more rain. Or maybe it's a bit of all of them. I'm not too sure. But at the end, I mean, that's leaving me, I guess, very confused as to what my land is trying to tell me, and a little stressed as to why I'm not understanding the messages it's trying to give me. And that kind of brings me to one more thought here. Speaking with Kevin yesterday, he had made the observation that our output is determined 80% by environment and 20% by management. So should we be caring at all? Should I be worrying about it? Should I be doing anything? Or maybe should I be just go fishing?
Thank you, Scott. Next up, I will pass it to Fred, who brought some toys along as well. So next up, Fred Lehman, please.
Welcome you all here. I was thinking about my presentation here, and I felt a little more confident about it until this morning. I'm starting to get weak knees, and it reminds me of my very first 4-H speech. I cried and ran to my mother. I'm not going to do that today. So, my title is, Why Don't It Grow? And that's poor grammar, but you get it. I'm not going to talk about that. We've all had a picture like that. We all got fields. And I'm going to start with a little bit of a disclaimer. Our bottom line is, I don't think I'm going to tell you guys anything that you haven't heard yet. You know, Michael over here, what he said, I heard what he was talking about, and it's like, yep, and yep, you know. And it's as complex as, why don't my kids talk to me? Anyways, let's move on. Righty. Life impressions. Okay, I'm Swiss heritage, and that means that we would have Swiss visitors, and they come over and they tell us about their yields and how much fertilizer they're putting on and how much it rains and all those kinds of things. And it's like, okay, you know, we don't have hope. But we grow #1 wheat, and they buy it. Don't forget that. And so my next thing I want to talk about is soil sampling in ag school. So bottom line was I did ag school in Switzerland for the very sole reason that I was dating Madeline, my wife now, and she was in Switzerland, and if I was gonna I had to get over there. So I did ag school over there, and that my father approved of that. Her father was an engineer, think about that. And I'm a farmer. So anyways, we're in farm school every Wednesday afternoon. We're doing it was kind of like life applications. We go out to a farm and we're doing soil sampling that day, or actually soil profiles. And if you take this shovel, how far is that going to go down in your soil when you even jump on it, right? Is there anybody here who says 6 inches? 6 inches? Dwayne, you're bold. I don't believe it. I know your soil. No, I'm just giving you the gear. After it rains, 6 inches. Last summer, early July, 2 inches, maybe, right? Well, anyways, Herr Moser, my teacher, he takes this shovel, puts it down, and he pushes down and this baby doesn't stop till she's at the hilt. Okay, and then he makes a hole, and then he pulls up a slab, and he says, "Now, boys, what's the matter with this soil?" And I stepped forward and I said, "Absolutely nothing. Put it back in the hole." So there's different soil out there, and there's good soil out there, and then there's soil in Cecil Lake, and my dad. Anyways, we all have that sentiment: your land, my neighbor's land, is better than my land, and I just want to add in there. Last year, I couldn't get this 2 inches into my field. Like when I wanted to mark out my living lab project, I couldn't get it past 2 inches, and so I found the mid-row bander line, and that was a fractured crack, and it would go down. It wouldn't stop once it got past that little 2-inch. Was about a 3-4 inch barrier there. Once it was past that, it would just keep going. And so there's a rule: say no to crack, but sometimes you need it. So, and then there's my brother-in-law. He was annoying. He's a good farmer. And he would say, what was it? It was spring of 2019. It was dry, and it was dusty. It was gross. And he's just, this little tune: seed in the dust, and your bins will bust, seed in the mud, and your year is a dud. And it's just dust. But, it rained, and we had phenomenal crops. So, it's a really dumb saying. I don't like it, but it works. It's true if it rains afterwards. But bottom line is, it doesn't matter if it rains or not. You seed in the mud, and it is bad. And that early, I'm the man in control. This was kind of done like that, and that's what you get. All right, moving forward. Got to hurry up here. So fall, everybody remembers these years, right? Fall harvesting, 96. Well, not all of us are even old enough to remember that. But 96, 97, that was bad. 2016 was bad. 2019 was bad, and spring of 2020, we're still harvesting. and if you're not sure if that's good for your soil, well, you haven't been out there looking at your fields. So, bottom line, and I turned good fields. I would say these were always dependable fields. They were rock solid fields. I wrecked them. I wrecked them by grinding around on them. And my largest field is my poorest field. And that's the one that should. And this is how you wreck soil. Okay? Take a look at that. The combine there, that's 2016. That was the first time we got stuck. And we're still trying to figure out where to hook up to the combine there. And then if you look there, the grain truck, if you look really close, I could pan in, but I can't. But if you look, the back tire there, like there is snow there, that's right. Oh, look at that. But, there's a 2-foot hole there. It's nasty. And I was not going anywhere until I was unloaded. And that, if you're not sure, is not good for your soil either. And then the third picture is we had plowed, and then it rained, or it was wet, and the furrows are now loose to the ground, and the land rollers just sunk, and then they just dragged everything along, and I don't know if you wouldn't get anywhere even with the biggest quad track. That too was a mess. What to do? So, for me, I realized our machinery's progression in size and weight does not help. We all read about that sort of stuff, eh? And my dad would say, "What are you doing with that big machine?" And I'm like, "The bigger, the better." And so what I do, I add more rubber, right? another dual. If you come to my farm, the triples, I got triples. I got duals on the swather. For the swather, I got made my own duals for the combine. And it gets me there, but I'm not sure if it's always smart. I'll go back to soils. I can look here. Soils tilled or seeded wet were a bust. And I just can't say that enough. And I got a video, but I couldn't get it on here. It's me seeding, and it actually looks pretty good. It looks pretty respectable. But that too was a bust because it was a little bit of rain in there, and Borgo makes a V-type rubber, a V-packer, and she's a beaut because it doesn't build up. The mud does not build up on there. It cleans off so you can keep driving. It's awesome. But it's a surefire way to shoot yourself in the foot. Fields, and this was another comment, the great Dave Wathrich, he's not here today, wise farmer, he said to me in 22, spring of 22, when we're standing there and it's wet and it's raining, and he says, you know, the fields that are the good soil, the fields with good soil, they're going to be productive this year, but the rest are going to be a bust. And I knew he was right. And so what happens? It stops raining, and it stops raining, and it stays stop raining, and it's dry, and all we had out there was bricks and the good soil. And unfortunately, annoyingly, he's got more good soil than me because he has more land along the riverbanks. So I didn't talk to him about yields that fall. Anyways, what to do? You got to find something that does work, right? And you know, like that can be a lot of things. There's one thing I kind of learned, and this takes a lot of discipline. I don't know if I have enough of it, but I'm gonna just make notes of that. Don't panic, okay? When it's wet out there, and I talk to guys, you know, like, you know, we've been learning about the soil compaction issue, and I talk to them and I say, you know, like, would you actually go out? Will you go out there the way you did 4 years ago? Will you go out there again like that? Because now we know that all we did was wreck our soil, and it was unproductive. Like, we weren't making any money for the next year, right? Don't panic. Don't run out and copy your panicky neighbor. That is bad. I'll tell you, in 2016, you know, I brought the combine out to the field on a Sunday evening. You know, we were just going to bring the combine out, you know. And Madeline's like, okay, you know. And I saw Dave's combines over, you know, 4 miles over on the other side of the hill. And it's like, I got to go combine. And Madeline said, we're going home. But anyways, we made enough of a mess of that field too. Don't till punky soil. You will destroy organic matter right there. I can't explain how it is, but I read about it and I said, because I had wet soils that we ground around on, and then I didn't wait for them to dry out because a good farmer's going to get crack-a-lacking on this stuff. And so we disked it, and you know, those fields, like 3 years later, they're still struggling. I'm still trying to get them back, and don't seed in the rain. You know, my equipment, I got the traction to pull it in the rain. I got packers that clean off automatically in the rain, but that is nothing but, like, don't do it. Don't do it. And when your duals look like that there, yeah, you know, that's why you have compaction. Okay, moving forward. Blimp. How do I build up my soil? Soil sampling. So I just brought along this guy. This is my high-tech soil sampler. It's just a piece of 1 7/8. This one's galvanized. I don't think it really matters. I beveled the end, and I beat on it. And you can see, like, that is not the work of a blacksmith. That's the work of a sledgehammer. And about every 2 years, it crushes enough, it falls off, and then I send my neighbor Dwayne Friesen a picture of what fell off, and we think, oh, that's cool. But bottom line is, I beat it in 6 inches, and then I got a tap on it to make the dirt fall out. But I'll tell you what, this is a soil sampler, and I get my soil sampling done. And lots of guys say, well, you know, I wanted Damien from Nutrient to come sample my soil, but he didn't make it. And I've had Nutrient come too, and it's not, you know, I'm not railing on him, because there's only so many soil samples they can do in a fall. If you make yourself a soil sampler and you throw it in your pickup, and when you get out to your field in the fall, you just take your samples. And if you have bags right there in your pickup, you put it in the bag. And if you have your sledgehammer, you got to have it all there then. And it happens. And a soil sample isn't everything, but it'll give you a benchmark. For me, a big battle is zero-till and compaction. All of us, there's a handful of us, we admit our best crops came off of deep tilling and using a Haybuster 7000. And we all know why we don't like the Haybuster 7000 drill. It's because the boxes are way up high and they're small. But that was a good drill. And so I stand here, and now I got this big heavy drill, and it wraps up the mud on the wheels. And but that's how we like it. So anyways, and then people talk about, well, when you zero till, you got to hang on, because after about year 7, things come around. And you know, when your soil is compacted, when you can't get the shovel in, you're starting to wonder, am I stupid? You know, like, should I just rip it up? Because you sit there and year after year after year, it doesn't get better. Yeah, that's the battle, you know. And then the other battle that, you know, we just got nothing. All we can do is management, extreme weather patterns. That is just, that's crazy. That's crazy. You know, one year it's super dry, the next it's not. So anyways, this is my project. Cover crops versus soil amendments. I'm probably over time, eh? Yep. 2 minutes? Okay, I'm going to talk like Alvin the Chipmunk. That's my recipe there. Akeem made that for me because I don't know much about, but I did annuals because next year, that's coming this year, I'm zero-tilling into it. So he made annuals. The only thing that's not an annual is the hairy vetch. That's because my neighbor Dwayne Friesen, he likes hairy vetch, and I think it's cute. It's got a good name. So anyways, lots of species. And you know, I think, you know, there's all kinds of reasons why multiple species work. And one of them is, you know, your soil varies from over the whole field. And something's going to grow. You know, the turnips in there, purple top turnips, I didn't see a lot of them, honestly. But some people saw them. So cover crops, the annoying thing about cover crops is you lose production. And that takes a lot of, you know, it takes a mindset to be able to say, well, just if the cover crops were the answer, 20% of my farm is doing nothing, you know. Is that true? You know, is it I don't know. Or like, is this a mindset that just to be accepted? So anyways, we had a cover crop, dry year, no feed. Everybody's drooling over the cover crop, so we cut it, baled it. But actually, the first time I did it to manage wild oats, because I had wild oats in there, and I didn't want to see them seed out and cause me more grief the next year, because we all know how that works. And if you're not sure, try it. Cover crops, that's beautiful. And everybody driving up and down the road agreed with me, and they'd ask me, Fred, what are you doing with it? You know, and they were cattle guys were asking me that. Yeah. The second growth was really nice. My plan was actually, I was thinking, how am I going to seed into this next year? You know, on the, you know, like the right way to do it is to walk it flat, to roll it flat, and then zero till into it. But I have a hoe drill, and that's not going to work. So, you know what? In the end, I cut it, baled it, sold it to the neighbor, And this year I'll zero till, no problem. Soil amendments, that was my other trial. Like, is soil amendments the other answer? So we grew some wheat, and I threw on 70 pounds of Super Cal 98 just into the seed row, and some copper. The boron didn't come on time, so it's in a bag in the shop. And I don't know, no unproductive year, that's the pros. Possibly less disruptive than cover crops. But, you know, moving forward, I didn't get a heck of a lot of it. Soil amendments, the hard thing is finding a consultant that's thinking like you, or that even, or maybe doesn't think like you and can help you. That's hard. Norm Duick, he made a comment on a webinar once. He said, "Poor information is worse than no information." So, got to be careful with that too. Yep, this was in the fall. My wheat, beautiful wheat field, a rock and 34 bushels an acre. Nice, lots of wild oats, beauty. Quest for truth. We're all here. In the end, if we don't make money, we're not going to be here anymore, and so it is important. And you know, yep. My inspirations, success. Long time ago, one consultant asked me, "What drives you, Fred? You know, like, what do you like?" And I like all kinds of things, but the thing that that I like success. And if you're honest with yourself, I'll bet you can't argue that. Inspirations, Gabe Brown. Most of you guys know him, and you know, but you know, Gabe is not everything that Gabe says is going to work. Not everything, but you know what? He's an inspiration. And Neil Kinsey is. They all make sense. Norm Duick and Jeff Dole, I like their work. I wish they'd call me back. My neighbors, I like to talk to my neighbors. Dwayne, he's an inspiration. He tries stuff. He does some weird stuff, you know, and I like that. And we gotta watch those kind of guys. If we blow our nose on people doing weird stuff, we're not going to learn much. Yeah, anyways, and I have a lot of respect for people that are brave enough to admit their mistakes, and people that will grow something weird and messy along the side of the road. Because one time I had a neighbor call me up and he says, "Freddie, what are you doing on the side of the road there?" And he says, "Maybe you want to do that off the road." And but I think we learn from each other. And I mean, I farm on the road, so I'm used to people watching what I do. Thank you.
You can give it to Daniel. Well, I guess I should have paid attention to the conversion from Swiss to Canadian time when I told you 5 minutes. Thank you, Fred. So closing us out will be Daniel Wall, bringing yet another different perspective. Daniel.
Well, what do you say after all that? What a setup for a denouement, eh? So I put together this. I thought maybe I'd try to say something different. Soil aeration. I don't like to talk about soil compaction. Soil aeration is much more positive. Soil aeration, and I want to talk a little bit about the moral dimension. And as she said, I never thought I'd be a farmer, although I grew up on a farm. I left the farm for good. I wasn't going back, and I guess now I'm back. But what really brought me back was, in one sense, the realization that there's a moral dimension, and we're going to talk about that. So when I first decided to go back to farming, I just wanted to farm, and I was reading permaculture and all kinds of stuff, and I wanted to raise healthy food for the community, because one of the reasons I didn't want to farm was I didn't see the point. I wanted my life to count for something. I wanted to do something good in the world, and I didn't. Farming the way I knew it didn't seem that inspiring. But then when I got into regenerative ag and permaculture and all this stuff, then I was like, hey, the world needs better food. I'm going to grow better food. And my dad had a little patch of compacted old hayfield that wasn't very productive, so I was going to turn that into a garden. And I won't go into all of that. I just want to say over time and with the use of a chisel plow and lots of compost, we ended up doing this. I used permanent beds, build up raised beds that were not compacted, and I really learned the importance of aerated soil. And I wouldn't say I'm done, but I raised some pretty good food, I think. But then over time, I'm looking into more succession with my dad, organic farm, certified organic, and so I'm working more into the rest of it. Now, how do I turn 400 acres into the kind of soil that I was raising those vegetables on? That's my goal. And so I purchased more cows because I consider them my soil aeration partners. I think I'm making some moves. This was an excellent organic oat crop. I kind of call it my perennial oat intercrop because I purposely didn't terminate a previous alfalfa crop too well. So I definitely needed to clean this right after I combined it, but I ended up sitting on 2,000 pounds of alfalfa seed as well as my oat crop, which I've been using all over the farm, which is kind of cool. But where I want to go, where I think, the moral dimension of farming, and I'm stepping out on a limb here a little bit because I feel like there's so often an undercurrent in events like this, but nobody says it. We wouldn't want to say it. It's the elephant in the room, right? It's not just about profits, I feel. And what brought me to farming was the fact that there is good that can and should be done, and that farming is a part of that. And as I worked with compacted soils, and as I learned about what creates compacted soils and what remedies compacted soils, I was just thinking so much about relationships. And farming is about symbiotic relationship. We need nature, and then I think nature can need us. Many people would say, no, humans just make a mess of nature. But nature is very random, and we humans have the potential to take something very random and make something very beautiful. And I think, those lettuce would not grow like that. That's really from a production standpoint, what I was doing there was ridiculous. But from an aesthetic and mental health perspective, I love that row of lettuce. I like it. Together we can be more. And I look at, soil aeration factors. There's so many. I quickly brainstormed 8 of them: soil composition, soil flocculation, soil microbes, root exudates, tillage, organic matter, nutrient balance, mechanical impact. I didn't have space for earthworms. The list can go on and on. But what I want to, by the way, I'm doing some soil compaction there. Sometimes I'm very fussy about my beds. I make these permanent beds, and when an employer or someone steps on those beds, I go, and you're choking my plants. Anyways, but here it was getting really late, and next day was supposed to frost and was supposed to freeze for the foreseeable future down to very cold. I was getting carrots out in a hurry, so made some decisions. But I feel like as I've been thinking about soil compaction and the factors, I feel like they really map well onto personal relationship factors. You know, when we think of personal relationship factors, there's personality type, there's social receptivity, you know, the private life, giving and receiving, hygiene and maintenance, biotic relationships, physical health and stress. We could unpack this, but I don't have time. But what I'm realizing is that just as there is a moral aspect to personal relationships, there's a moral aspect, I think, to soil aeration factors. I believe my title was Living on Love, and I think we're talking about living soil. Now, I can't prove this, but I believe from the bottom of my heart that it's love that creates life. And I think if I can learn to see my soul not as something to manipulate, but as something to have a relationship with, I think my soul will respond, just like personal relationships would respond. You know, I was just thinking, what happens in personal relationships when there's, you know, affection, self-sacrifice, forgiveness, kindness? I love this picture of me and my 2 daughters, and they're just open and free. But you know what happens when there's greed or criticism, anger or hatred? What happens in relationship? We close up. We become compacted. And people get compacted between each other. And I just think, wow, isn't that exactly what's happening with our soils, I think, so often. And so, yeah, I really love this quote from Christian bishop: mercifulness opens the way to the heart of all creatures and brings joy. Unmercifulness brings fog to the fore and creates a confined isolation. Am I where I want to be in this? Absolutely not. So often I get into the stress of things, both in my personal relationships and my relationships with soil. I get the wrong frame of mind, but and just, I don't know if you can say it any better than this. I know Alan Jackson repopularized this one some years back after 2011 with that country song. But now faith, hope, and love remain, these three. Talked yesterday to somebody about farmer mental health, and you know, farmers need faith, they need hope. But the greatest of these is love, said by the Apostle Paul in 70 AD. That's all I had.
You know what blows me away is when I call up these producers and I try to get them to be part of a producer panel, they will very often say, oh, I just don't know if I have anything to share. So we're a little bit behind time, but I want to make sure if there are some questions for these lovely gentlemen, there is an opportunity for at least 1 or 2 questions. Yes. So the question is, has anybody tested the soil organic matter in the areas that were compacted and looked what that was like? Anybody would like to take that?
Oh, definitely. My garden soil, where I turned that into soil where I can stick my hand in that deep, is 7, 8, typically speaking. My compacted soils tend to be 2.5.
Can I add to that? So I just soil sample all my fields. And then this Living Labs project, I did lots there. And unfortunately, the organic matter on my, it hasn't changed. Like it just rides around that 4, plus or minus, maybe 3.03%, but it's and yeah, it, like, you can squash that stuff flat too if it's at 4%, not at 8 maybe.
All right,
Did you add?
One more question at the back. So the question was around soil moisture, our dry conditions, and how management will relate to that. I think we heard a little bit from all 3 of you around that, but maybe any additional thoughts? Scott?
Something I just learned yesterday there that I didn't realize was that clay hangs on to moisture, so there may be some moisture there that we, won't give it up to the plants, and I don't know if that can be changed. I don't think so. No. So yeah, that's definitely a tough one there.
So my thought was with the producer panel, like Scott was sharing too, is to just give you some food for thought. And I'm sure, like I'm walking away with a lot of food for thought from these three gentlemen. Very unique and beautiful perspectives. And let's think about these things as we go through the day and hear all the other speakers. So thank you so much again to all three of you.